Raising the stakes in the Russia investigation. President Trump taking to Twitter to weigh in after special counsel Robert Mueller indicted more than a dozen Russian nationals, 13 to be exact, and 3 organizations for allegedly interfering in the 2016 presidential election. If it was the goal of Russia to create discord, disruption, and chaos within the U.S., then with all the committee hearings, investigations, and party hatred, they have succeeded beyond their wildest dreams. They're laughing their butts off in Moscow. Get smart, America. Maria sat down with the host of, this was yesterday, Rush Limbaugh's show. He had some foreboding words. This was on Fox News Sunday. Foreboding words for the commander-in-chief.
The danger for the president is it would be very, I think, seductive for him to embrace this, totally embrace, say, see, I've been vindicated. The worst thing he could do in his world is to validate this whole investigation by claiming victory here, because what if down the road there is another indictment or a series of indictments that do name Trump or do name the Russians and Trump campaign colluding, because that's what this is about. This is about getting Trump.
Joining me now is Chief Political Correspondent for the Washington Examiner, Fox News contributor Byron York. What did you make of the indictments, Trump reaction, and then next steps in this?
Well, as far as the indictment is concerned, there's not actually a lot in the indictment that the intelligence committees didn't already know from their Trump-Russia investigations. We knew there was this content farm in Russia, and they were using social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter to try to disrupt the election. We knew all that. I think one of the things you see in this is really how small it was. We know, and there were dozens of people working on this. The Mueller is kind of vague as to how much money was spent. He says in September of 2016, in other words, at the top of it, they spent $1.25 million a month. That is in an election in which both sides spent a total of $2.4 billion. So that's not even a rounding error. And then, if you combine what's in the indictment with what Facebook and Twitter executives testified before the Senate and the House last November, then you see a little more. They said, for example, of the Facebook ads, of all the impressions of those ads, 44% of the impressions came before the election, but 56% came after the election. They talked about extraordinarily small amounts of money paid in some key states. Apparently, the Russians paid $300 for Facebook ads in Pennsylvania, $823 for Facebook ads in Michigan. This is not the stuff of rigging an election.
But Byron, by President Trump tweeting about it over and over and over again over the weekend, I'm going to ignore how the mainstream media covered it, because, again, a lot of these networks don't like President Trump, and they immediately, it was kind of almost appalling how they pivoted from the Parkland shooting to this, because this investigation is their bread and butter. With President Trump tweeting about it, you say that this is, you put it in terrific financial perspective, in a perspective of numbers, but President Trump talking about it so incessantly, it gives it life and makes it bigger, seem bigger than it really was.
Well, one of the president's recurring themes, you saw it again in the tweets, is that there was no collusion between his campaign and the Russians. How many times has he said that? Just many, many, many times. And indeed, in this indictment, there is no allegation, no suggestion of collusion. It doesn't say, it doesn't rule it out. There's just nothing in there. But there's always been two aspects to this Trump-Russia investigation. The first is finding out what the Russians did. And actually, you see a lot of that in this indictment. But the second aspect of the Trump-Russia investigation has always been the get Trump part of it. And that's what drives the president nuts. And, of course, it's what drives it politically on Capitol Hill. It's what drives some Democrats to talk about impeaching President Trump if they were to win control of the House this November. And that's the element that the president cannot seem to ignore.
And ignore the suggestion by his foes. This is their, again, their lifeblood. that suggests that the election, the results weren't legitimate now because of this. That seemed to that certainly eats at him. I don't think I'm overstepping by saying that.
Not at all. And here again, Rod Rosenstein, the Deputy Attorney General, said this in introducing the charges on Friday. The indictment makes no allegation at all about the election being affected, the results of the election being affected by this. And indeed, there's been no official body, the intelligence community or anybody else, who has said that the election results were affected by this. In that, I would go back to what I was saying earlier about the simple smallness of these measures and whether they really could have affected an election as big as a national U.S. presidential election.
In terms of plugging the leaks of the Justice Department, Maria talked to Attorney General Jeff Sessions and pressed him on what was being done to address these leaks that are plaguing the DOJ. I want you to listen to this and then get your reaction.
That is a violation of the law to leak classified documents, and it is being investigated. I will say this, there are last 2 years before I became Attorney General, each year there was 3 open investigation of classified leaks. Now we have 27. We're going after this aggressively. I have directed it personally. Some of the matters involve this matter, and some of it is matters that I'm not recused on, and we're pursuing aggressively.
Byron, is the DOJ doing enough to combat these leaks?
Well, they're doing what they can do, and certainly Republicans were appalled at the beginning of the Trump administration. Remember, one of the biggest leaks was the leak of this intercepted phone conversation between Michael Flynn, who at the time was the incoming national security advisor, and the Russian ambassador. A conversation that most people believe was entirely proper. There's no problem with the incoming national security advisor talking to an ambassador from another country, including Russia. The Russian ambassador was wiretapped by American intelligence, not unusual there either. But what is unusual is the conversation, the recording, the transcript are classified at the very highest levels of secrecy, and indeed they were leaked before Trump ever became president. So this is something that the intelligence community and whoever does this kind of leaking got off on a very bad foot with the new Trump administration, and Jeff Sessions has been pursuing it ever since.
Byron, one quick thing. How long does this Mueller probe go on? We don't have any sense, do we?
No, you don't. You know, you've heard talk about the Trump lawyers team saying, well, we think it's going to be over real soon. And we do know that there have been talks between Mueller and the White House about speaking to the president, which suggests they might be getting toward the end. But, you know, they have a trial of Paul Manafort, which is not going to happen at least until the fall, so they're going to be going for that. And clearly there's lots of other aspects of this investigation. For example, this new indictment we were just discussing did not address the hacking of the DNC and John Podesta. And then, of course, there's the whole obstruction of justice element to it. So there seems to be a lot more left to cover in this investigation.
Byron, great to see you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Dagan.
Coming to work on holiday.
Good to be here.
Yeah.